under power, huh? And a lot of items are really on the top of the agenda from everybody. And two items should be mainly discussed today. One is, of course, the situation regarding our relations, our trade relations with the United States. And secondly, the so-called structured dialogue between the Commission, the Trade Commissioner, and our committee. We will put the different structured dialogue from the different committees together in a summary report so that we can have a proper view on our relation between the European Parliament and the Commission. Maroš, you will make a presentation at the beginning covering both the US and the structured dialogue. And afterwards, we will have two separate rounds for discussion, one on the US and one on the structured dialogue. And of course, even I'm really possible and willing to have to make a long speech, I will not do it, because now it's the purpose of our meeting to discuss this with you, and I give you immediately the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, dear Bernd, honourable members. As always, pleasure to be here in front of the Committee on International Trade. I also would like to say hello to all the participants. And you already highlighted, dear Chair, that I'm here the first times since the 1st of December, and I know that on top of that we had quite a few monitoring groups, and we even been together in several plenaries. And this is not that we from the Commission, from Digitrade, would like to be the world record in attendance of debates on the trade issue, but it just really reflects the dynamic, I would say also unpredictability, and I would say this new global trade pattern of the discussion of these very, very important issues. Therefore, I very much appreciate the opportunity, and I'm of course very much looking forward to hearing also your thoughts on all the issues which I'm going to raise in my introductory remarks, because that for sure will also help us and will contribute to define our strategy moving forward. I will start with US, as you suggest, dear Chair. As you know, we are the largest trading partners, and our relationship is truly gigantic, massive. I would say our trade exchange represents 1.6 trillion euros in 2023, and EU-US bilateral investment flows to more than 5 trillion. And I think what is very important for European but also American citizens, that this trade has also extremely important from the point of view of job creation. So we are talking about millions of jobs, altogether 10 million jobs, where 3.5 million jobs in the United States are directly created by the European companies and European investment. And therefore, I think it should be a priority for both of us, for European Union and for United States, to protect and further develop this relationship and to work together on shared challenges. And this is the message I delivered the last month in the US when I was there personally and physically, but this is also the message I never miss to underline when we have our ongoing phone and video call conversations. I am convinced that continuous engagement and the positive approach is the best way forward. However, I have always been also very clear with my US counterparts that we will react firmly and proportionally if we are hit by unjustified measures. And as you know very well, on the 12th of March, the US imposed 25% tariffs on 26 billion of euros of steel and aluminium exports from Europe. Just to put it into the perspective, this is approximately 5% of total EU exports to the United States of America. On top of it, more EU products might be subject to tariffs in the coming days. And I want to be clear that these are unjustified tariffs. These tariffs are harming European companies, workers, and citizens. And we all know that the EU is clearly not the source of the problem when it comes to steel and aluminium. The real problem is overcapacity, and this means the way forward should be that Europe and US should cooperate together to tackle the root causes of the overcapacity. And as you know, we are not hesitating to take action in this regard, and you, I'm sure, noticed that yesterday we adopted the new Steel and Metal Action Plan, where the trade policy plays a very instrumental role. On the 12th of March, in reaction to the imposition of these unjustified tariffs, the Commission responded firmly by announcing swift and proportionate countermeasures to the, on the US exports to the EU. And this package includes the suspended EU countermeasures from 2018 and 2020 that target range of US products in response to the economic harm done on 8 billion euros of EU steel and aluminium exports. At the same time, the Commission also launched a new process for the adoption of further measures to respond to the expansion of the US Section 232 tariffs hitting 18 billion euros of EU exports. Again, to compare it with what happened 5 years ago, the hit on the steel and aluminium, and I have to add derivatives, makes the package of the import duties from US on the EU products 3 times bigger than what we had 5 years ago. And therefore, the Commission has published a list of the products imported from the US for possible inclusion in the expanded package of countermeasures. We invited all stakeholders to submit their views until 26th of March. I know that you are very familiar with the process. Just for the record, I would say that all the products are listed on the website of the DG Trade for all stakeholders to look at and to start the consultations with us. I also have to say that the situation is quite fluid, quite volatile, and that we would also have to adjust our steps and our policies, because in the light of the recent announcement that the United States are planning to introduce additional tariffs on the 2nd of April, we are now considering to align the timing of the 2 sets of EU countermeasures so we can consult with the member states on both lists simultaneously. And this would also give us extra time for negotiations with our American partners to try to find a mutually agreeable solution, which clearly would be preference for us. As a result, all the EU countermeasures that were announced on the 12th of March would, in that case, take effect in mid-April. This approach would allow us to deliver a firm, proportionate, at the same time robust and well-calibrated response to US measures, while at the same time I could continue with the mission to which I was entrusted by the President von der Leyen to continue talks with my American counterparts, trying to find the solution with them. As far as we understand, the United States will impose the so-called reciprocal tariff as of 2nd of April on its trading partners for what it considers unfair and unbalanced trade. And for them, this should serve as a baseline for redefining and rebuilding US trading relations with the rest of the world. Only then, as we've been told, may partners be able to engage on possible negotiations. When it comes to EU tariffs on EU goods, I think it's very important to underscore that the average is very low. We are talking around 1%. However, it is clear that the US will also take into account their calculation on what they consider to be non-tariff barriers, such as value-added taxes or the EU regulations. At the moment, there is not enough clarity on what the percentage level of such a tariffs would be, what goods they would cover, and how these tariffs would be applied. And therefore, I'm engaging with my US counterparts to better understand the US plans and look for possible solutions. Meanwhile, we also, of course, continue working on our preparations. On the 2nd of April, we will need to assess the action taken by the US and keep a flexible approach so as to calibrate our response accordingly. In addition to the reciprocal tariffs, the US has launched a Section 232 investigation on copper, wood, again including derivatives, which could lead to additional tariffs or other restrictive measures. We have also been informed that the US is considering measures under Section 301 on shipbuilding that could have also negative effects for EU maritime transport firms. So we are following all these developments very, very closely, and we will again need to be ready to act firmly, swiftly and proportionally if needed. But allow me to reiterate that this is not our preferred scenario, not at all. And I will continue engaging with the US to see if we can avoid any unnecessary escalation. And this is the same message that the Commission is delivering to the Member States, and I'm pleased to say that the sense of EU unity and solidarity is strong. We clearly stand united, and we are firm in our resolve to protect our interests while continuing to invite the US to engage constructively. Honourable members, if you allow, Mr. Chair, I would also now turn to the second topic of this joint hearing, because I'm, of course, extremely pleased to have the first structured dialogue with your committee as well. And I want to start by underlining the importance attached by the Commission and myself personally to working in close cooperation with all of you. So I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to exchange with you on a number of other trade-related issues. If you allow, I would start with ongoing files. Let's start with the generalized scheme of preferences review. I recognize the strengths of the feeling when it comes to the two outstanding issues concerning the readmission conditionality and safeguard mechanism for agriculture products. But I believe that we need to find a way through these issues, and I want to reiterate my commitment to help facilitate a way forward. Second important issue is foreign direct investment screening regulations, where we are very happy to see much swifter progress. And I look forward to trilogue starting in May, and I see no reason for us not to complete this work by the end of this year. I also want to highlight the Commission's recent proposal for the imposition of tariffs on the remaining agricultural goods and nitrogen-based fertilizers imported from Russia and Belarus. And the Commission has also proposed a plan to support Ukraine's iron and steel sectors, which would continue to exempt their imports into the European Union from the EU global safeguards. We count on Parliament's support to adopt this legislation swiftly and efficiently. If you allow me to turn to our network of free trade agreements, which has a key role in boosting Europe's competitiveness. We already have 44 preferential trade agreements covering 76 countries and 44% of EU trade. And this network, I'm glad to report, is set to grow, as many around the world turn to the European Union as a reliable, open partner in an increasingly polarized economic climate. Work continues internally to sign agreements with Mercosur and Mexico following the recent conclusion of negotiations. We aim to send the text to the European Parliament and the Council in the spring for Mexico and the summer for Mercosur. Here I want also to touch on the concerns I know many of you have with regards to communication between us on the agreement with Mexico. I have to underline that this was a rapidly changing situation which evolved over the Christmas period. And as you can imagine, in that time, this, as many other negotiations, been very, very intense. But I want, once again, to underline my commitment to ensure that you are properly consulted and that you properly receive timely and detailed information whenever possible. If you allow me to inform you about further ongoing negotiations. Currently, we have a 10th round of discussions with India and these negotiations kicked off here in Brussels last week. As you know, the President, together with the Prime Minister Modi, announced the target to conclude these negotiations by the end of 2025. This clearly demonstrates a strong commitment to finding a deal, and we are pleased to see this echoed by our Indian counterparts. However, I will not hide that the gaps still remain. Discussions will intensify in the coming weeks and months, and I'm optimistic that further progress can be made. I also had talks earlier this month with the Thailand's Minister of Commerce, Pichai Naritpapan, and it's still, I would say, early days, but we see positive engagement and good consolidation of the text advancing in all chapters. On Indonesia, extensive talks at technical and chief negotiator level continue on the key outstanding issues which are crucial to finding an agreement that brings value and delivers on EU's key commercial interest. On Philippines, the second round of talks last month were productive, and we see steady progress and continued engagement on both sides. The third round is scheduled to take place in June. Finally, on the Gulf Cooperation Council, we are working hard both with the GCC as a region as well as individual GCC countries to move forward. And I also would like to inform you that the United Arab Emirates are very much interested to advance our negotiations. So we are now in the process of closing the scoping exercise for potential free trade agreement with UAE. We should, at the same time, not limit ourselves to thinking of trade simply in the terms of FTA, however. We must be much broader and cohesive in our engagement with the third countries. We have to bring also new products to the shelves. And I'm sure that you noted the recent conclusion of the digital trade agreement with South Korea, and also the fact that we are working towards the first clean trade and investment partnership, which are intended to bring a holistic approach to our relations with third countries, better aligning of our engagement on clean trade, investment and development. And in this regard, we have now launched negotiations with South Africa, as announced by President von der Leyen during her visit to South Africa last week. If you allow me to conclude, I would only mention that the first Sustainable Investment Facilitation Agreement with Angola entered into force on the 1st December 2024, and we are looking for the similar opportunities with other partner countries. Maybe last point on China. As you know, I will visit China next week. China remains an important partner for the EU, and my intention here is to engage proactively on areas of divergence, raise our concerns related to the level playing field and the impact on the EU, which we cannot leave unaddressed, seek resolution to concrete market access issues, and discuss how to ensure the Chinese foreign direct investment to the EU would contribute to the development of the EU value chains and development of technology here in the European Union. Of course, I look forward to providing you full debrief of my trip at the appropriate time after my report. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for being so generous with my time. I'm at the 17th minute. I know it's time to stop, so I'm stopping right now and looking forward to the question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So thanks a lot for also giving commitment for the fifth visit quite soon after your visit in China here in the committee. So we will have now two rounds. First round is on US. We have now 1.5 hours, and the second round will be on the structured dialogue on the other items. So this means that you should really stick to the speaking time. For the rapporteur and the shadow rapporteurs, 1.5 minutes, and 1 minute for the other members asking for the floor. And on the US, I have the honor to be also the standing rapporteur for the US-EU trade relations, and I will start with two questions, Maroš. The first is, you mentioned the change of timetable of our retaliation measures. And of course, a naive man or woman could say, okay, we would put 50% on bourbon whiskey, and then we got a post on Truth Social that this will get a reaction from the United States with 200% on French champagne and wine, and whoop, the Commission changed the timetable. So is this the reaction, or what is the reason behind, and how we can really demonstrate that we are really react in a swift and a proportional and a clear manner to the US? Secondly, you mentioned the 2nd of April. Yeah, there are a lot of rumors about that, and I will not go into details and ask you possible retaliation measures and so on. But perhaps you can give me a hint after your talks with Lutnick and Greer. What is your assessment? What do they want? What is the goal of the exercise? Huh? So just setting illegal tariffs on what goods ever is not an end in itself. So there is a goal behind. What is your assessment? What they want to achieve? That's from my side, and I'm in time. Yeah, and Jürgen is representing Celiana as a shadow for the EPP.
Exactly. Celiana could not be here, so let me read out her statement and questions. Dear Commissioner, the task ahead of you and President von der Leyen is certainly not an easy one. I welcome your prompt reaction to the unjustified tariff that took place on the March 12th. Protecting our businesses and consumers must remain our top priority. However, we cannot allow our transatlantic partnership to suffer, especially in these volatile times. NATO allies must stand together, not only for security, but also for the protection of our shared economic interest against growing global competitors, especially China. Just as we found common ground in past negotiation, such as the lobster deal during the first term, we must now identify areas where we can demonstrate flexibility without jeopardizing our key industries. At a recent AmCham panel I attended, American representatives stated that US is clear with their demands. The US annually published report on tariff and non-tariff trade barriers, yet these reports have remained largely unchanged for years. This presents an opportunity for us to assess where they expect more actions from us and to identify areas where making concessions would pose minimal risk to our economy. Ultimately, the cost of a few strategic concessions is far smaller than the damage caused by tariffs, which will directly impact our businesses, jobs and consumers by driving up prices and disrupting trade. Two fast questions. How do you assess the potential impact on the announced EU countermeasures? Can you share the European Commission's long-term strategy to prevent further escalation and manage future trade disputes? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. For the Patriots, it's Anna.
Dziękuję, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question will be asked in Polish. Commissioner, thank you very much for your presence. Thank you very much for presenting the current situation. My question is the following. Does not the European Commissioner believe that this is all escalation if you impose tariffs, especially on the Republican states? Is this a good path to follow? Because this is a tariff war and this is a political war as well, because it is very clear that you are imposing tariffs on products that are being produced in Republican states of the US. So are you not blinded by political affiliations in this situation? Well, of course, we had unanimity in trade and tariff policy some time ago, but now this unanimity is crumbling. Even before we were discussing the second package of tariffs, so what the Commission is going to do about this lack of unanimity between member states?
Thanks a lot. For the ECR, is replacing Francesco, the shadow rapporteur. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I will speak in Italian. Grazie, Thank you very much, Executive Vice President, for your report. I'm going to start off with what you said at the end. We're very reassured when you say that the tariff war isn't your favorite scenario, because like you, Vice President, we don't think that this is the right moment for Europe to flex its muscle. Not because it's wrong from an ideological point of view to do that in principle, but we think we need to use our brains more than our muscles, so it should be more about brains than brawn. But it's also a comms war. So I would like to ask you to what extent the whole issue of communications is important. This whole issue of 200% on wine and so on. So how much has already been described? How much has already been done when it comes to choosing how to deal with this? And when I say we should use our brains, I'm saying this because when it comes to our trade relations with the United States, it's not just about goods that we buy because we don't have them at home. We're thinking of critical raw materials, for example, the whole issue of AI, microchips. But there's also so much that are the raw materials that we need and that lead to the high-quality agricultural products that we have. So that's why it would be completely crazy to engage in a war that would affect exports on both sides. And we would also find ourselves not being able to produce certain goods because of this. So, I mean, there have been attacks. I understand. We take note. But this is my final comment. Thank you.
Grazie. And now it's for the Renew, Karin Karlsbro.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Šefčovič, dear colleagues, thank you for being here, first of all. In our vision, we would have the best and deepest trade relations with the US. But with President Trump in the White House, this seems to be impossible. To that, we have to react strongly and full support to the Commission's reaction so far. A question. You will now have 2 more weeks of negotiations with the US before our countermeasures enter into force. Is your assessment that our American partners are still open for negotiations? Dear Commissioner, it's impossible to discuss trade relations with the US without mentioning Ukraine. We follow how the US treats the country fighting for its existence. Duty-free trade with the EU has served as an economic lifeline for Ukraine. At the same time, this trade has also been highly beneficial for the EU. However, the EU's temporary trade liberalization measures are set to expire at the beginning of June. Could you give us an update why there has been no progress on the Ukraine DCFTA, please? Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. For the Greens is Anna Cavazzini.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention it again because I think it does not seem clear to everyone here in the room. Of course, Trump and his administration is starting the trade war. It sounds a little bit like the Commission is doing it, and of course this is complete nonsense. I'm sorry. The Commission tried to negotiate, and of course we have to retaliate. And of course we have to retaliate in states where Republicans are hit most, because it's not the Democrats starting the trade war, it's the Republicans, it's the Republican administration. And I think we as Greens are really supporting the Commission's approach of being always open to negotiation, of trying a cooperative approach. But I'm sorry, if the cooperative approach is not working, then of course we also have to show our teeth, because it's the only language that this Trump administration is basically understanding. And I wanted to be also very clear here. We need, as European Union, to retaliate if necessary in an appropriate way, and this is what the Commission is doing. But we also, of course, need to be crystal clear that when it comes to our regulation, our tech regulation, for example, that we will not move 1 centimeter because we are sovereign as European Union and we cannot be blackmailed by tariffs from another country to change our own legislation. And I think here the Commission could be still a little bit more clearer in public statements. One more thing, I also think we need a little bit more offensive lines also, because we are otherwise always reacting, always in the defensive line. And I think, for example, putting on the table again an EU digital tax that will also, hurt some of the biggest tariff fans and Trump fans in the US quite hard could be an option. And then thirdly, I think we need to also make sure that deviation effects from the tariffs that Trump is unrightfully putting in place will also not hurt our industry. And there I have a question to Mr. Šefčovič. Why basically did you delay the first steel and aluminium safeguard reaction? And is the reform that is upcoming really enough to safeguard the industry in Europe? I also wanted to know where the money of the counter-tariffs will go. Will it also go to the industry that is basically hurt? And also, to get back to Bernd's question, make sure that we keep the unity in Europe and that we don't suffer from individual sectors then lobbying against the counter-tariffs. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And last in the first round is Martin Schirdewan for the left. Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Commissioner, for joining us today. And I've listened with great attention, and I do understand the political measures which you're describing. However, what I don't hear in your explanation is a long-term strategy as to look at the how do we address this trade war with the U.S. And we're talking about these punitive tariffs. We're talking about jobs, job security, and we're looking at steel and aluminum and copper as well, perhaps wood, that sector. I'd have to say, I would like to know what kind of long-term strategy the Commission is going to have for these sectors that are going to be impacted by the trade war. That's my first question. Second question. Now, as I hear from your discussions with your American counterparts, that one of the big barriers for having common understanding is European legislation, European legislation in the digital sector. So I'd like to know, is that the object of the discussions? In other words, of pulling back measures in DMA, for example, 80% of the digital internal market is in the hands of very few American companies. So I'd like to know if that is the object of your discussions.
It was the first round from the rapporteur and the shadow rapporteurs. For the second round, we have 10 requests for the floor. Before giving Maroš the floor back, I will invite now the standing chair of the US delegation to take the floor for 1.5 minutes as well.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, Vice President Šefčovič, for being here, for your overview. It's clear that the EU-US trade relationship is extremely important. It's worth nearly 1 trillion euros annually, supporting millions of jobs. In this moment of strain of this partnership, I tried in my role to reach out to American businesses, and I gave them a very clear message that they should not play a dangerous gamble, and I think many of them agree. What dangerous gamble I'm thinking about? The risk of accepting this kind of aggression towards our functioning trade relation, by hoping that bringing EU legislation into this discussion of non-tariff barriers could end up with weakening the European legislation in their advantage. Some of them have this interest. But I told them it's a dangerous gamble because we are not going to move. Other colleagues have been clear. I think the Parliament will defend strongly, but I think also many governments, the idea of keeping our legislation decided here, not elsewhere, and we risk instead an escalation of the trade conflict. So instead we need to concentrate all the stakeholders, including the businesses, including all the national institutions, supporting your work to de-escalate. But this means also that we need to react strongly to show that we are ready to have countermeasures in the idea of negotiating, of finding solutions. So I'm sure that this Parliament will support this work, and as the US, as delegation with the US, we are engaging with the US Congress also to build constructive relations to support this line of action. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. So, first round for you, Maroš, around about 10 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, dear Bernd. So I'll go through the questions as they've been posed. The first one, you had two questions. I will start with the second, and I think it will bring the light on the first one. I mean, the question was, what is, how do I understand the goal of this new tariff policy coming from the United States of America? First and foremost, I have to say that in all discussions we have, our American counterparts are highlighting that they really feel that the global trade system is unfair to them. That simply there was different bias in different tariffs accumulated over the years, and that they want on the 2nd of April to rebalance the system. That the goal, as they stated, is that they want to have a fair trade system. They want to look at the barriers, at the tariffs, that they would be on the same level, and at the same time they also want to tackle the non-tariff barriers. The ultimate goal, as they describe it, is to reindustrialize US, to shorten the global supply chains, to do this onshoring in US, and to revive industry and economy. So this is how I understand what is the goal. Of course, we are having very intense discussion on these topics, that we in Europe have the same goal. We also are reindustrializing. Also for us, the industry is very important, and in some concrete elements like steel and aluminium, we are tackling the same issue, which is overcapacity. We are also tackling the same problems if it comes to scarcity of the critical raw materials. And let's not forget, we still are absolutely convinced the United States are our allies. So I think we should really try to look for the ways how to resolve these global issues as allies within the G7 framework. And I have to say that despite, as you can imagine, these talks are not easy, not difficult, I have to say that I have a very good working relationship with the Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Latnik, with the US Trade Representative, Mr. Greer, and we are trying to work on the so-called no-surprise policy to kind of brainstorm each other about the decisions to come. I also want to be very realistic about what will happen between now and the 2nd of April. There is a lot of, I would say, explanations from the both sides happening, and I will answer this more clearly in a subsequent questions. But I think that it's still a lot what needs to be explained. What are tariffs? What are taxes? What are fines? If it comes, let's say, to our digital regulation, and this needs clearly the clarification. So for United States of America, the 2nd of April, as some journalists describe it, this is the World Tariff Day. And I expect that most of the countries on this planet, if not all, will be hit by the US tariffs, with the goal of rebalancing from their perspective trade relationship. Therefore, now I'm coming to the first question. We, I think, would have to recalibrate our response, because as you would recall, our measures being targeted to react to this 25% tariffs on steel, aluminium, and derivatives. And so what we did was that we we taken from the freezer the first package, which was actually agreed already, I think, five years ago, which is approved, which was discussed, and we put it on the table. And we now see that clearly this is not enough, not only to address this 25%, but it's definitely not enough what might come on top of it, because I think that there will be something which will come on top of it. So therefore, what we are suggesting right now, also to keep the unity among the member states, which I think is absolutely crucial and important, is that we present it the first list, and then we presented already the second list and immediately started the consultations with the member states and relevant stakeholders to also follow our legal procedures, because we have to be on legally very, very safe ground when we are talking about the countermeasures. So all this process would be completed by mid-April, and if we will not find the solution which would be based on understanding, or if we would not see, I would say, how we can resolve this issue. So we are ready with the countermeasures by the mid-April. So I think that's why we are putting, I would say, these two lists together. We will recalibrate and adjust our response when we see what is coming on the 2nd of April, and then if we cannot find the solution until the mid-April, we will simply come up with our countermeasures. So we're definitely not changing the course. We just want to be very, very clear what we are going to do. Maybe one additional element when we are trying to kind of detect what are the areas which are so important for our US counterparts. So most of the discussion is evolving around 5 areas where they feel that they need to rebalance the relationship. Cars, chips, timber, steel, aluminium, and pharma. And so these would be, I think, the 5 areas. I understand from my contacts with our US counterparts, they see the most problematic the car section. For the rest, I think we'll have intense discussions, but very much I would say what they're looking at is that we export 800,000 cars and they export 160,000 cars, and as I said, most of the exports to EU are European brands, even though they are made in US. So I think this is a little bit the situation, what is on the table and what we are trying to deal with. To Mr. Warborn, clearly, I would like to underline one thing. As you can see from everything what I say, what we do, we are not trigger happy. We are not happy at all about where we are. We are not happy at all that we have to have measures, countermeasures, discussions with our closest allies of the last 70, 80 years. But at the same time, I mean, we also have to show that we will protect our businesses, we will protect our citizens, we will protect our regulatory autonomy. And that if there will be no other choice, we will have to deploy our countermeasures. But I can also tell you that we will try to avoid it as much as possible. When I was there, of course, I heard a lot of, I would say, complaints towards the EU on the issues also, as you mentioned, on lobster, on shellfish, on many other things. But I also presented our list of grievances to our US partners, because we have some issues linked with SPS, which are on the table for more than 10 years. So it's, I would say, mutual, that if we really want to kind of remove the problems from the table, let's look at their list, let's look at our list, and let's do it as biggest trading partners on this planet and be constructive about it. Because for me, it's also very difficult to explain to European agri-food and agriculture industry that for the pears and apples, they have to wait for 10 years to get a permit to import this to US, and nothing is happening. And I can give you a lot of examples like that. So I would be in this sense for the positive reciprocity, that we work on positive agenda together and not how can we actually hit each other. Let's see how far we can go until the 2nd of April, but we definitely should not stop there, because our trade relationship is simply too important for both of us, but I would say also for the world. We are talking about more than 30% of the global trade, and I think if we will have a problem, I would say a lot of other countries would have a problem as well. To Madam Brilka, here I would like to say that you probably look at the first list of our countermeasures, which was composed 5 years ago. And how we are, of course, composing this list, I think it's very important for the honourable members to understand the logic, that first and foremost, we want to make sure that we are kind of targeting the goods which we can get from somewhere else. Secondly, we are also making very thorough analysis to make sure that our member states are kind of negatively impacted at the same level, that it's fair for everyone. And it's not easy. But we are doing our utmost to make sure that this burden, which we don't like, which we hate, I can say, but it's part of the countermeasures, is equally spread, and we are definitely not blinded by the political associations, and we don't want to do it. So if we can avoid it, let's avoid it. And therefore, we started the consultations now with the both list, giving the opportunity to member states, the relevant stakeholders, to talk to us, because I believe that through these intense consultations, and we are talking to them non-stop right now, to our member states, we want to build a strong unity, because that's our most precious currencies, and we went through quite difficult negotiations in the past, and we know how important this is. And then to Francesco, I totally agree with you that it would be much better to avoid this situation, and I can tell you that we are just not flexing the muscles. As I said, if we can, we would avoid it. But also, I mean, we have a lot of products where the United States are very much dependent on us. If you just take, paradoxically, the specialty steel, they don't have it. Without our specialty steel, they cannot build their planes, their tanks, and the cars. They need specialty steel, which is made only in Europe. So therefore, that was my suggestions to our American counterparts. Okay, I understand that this is the political signal that you want to clearly rebuild the steel and aluminum industry in the US. But in this case, where you really need our specialty steel, shouldn't we at least, kind of have an exemption for that? But at this time, it was not possible. In future, I believe we can resolve it. But there are a lot of, other products where also our American counterparts need European Union. They are very much interested in our metal scrap. They are very much interested in chip printing machine. They are very much interested in the money printing machines. And of course, they also need to cooperate with us a lot on the different navigational system for the planes. And it's normal, because we are allies and we've been building our supply chains in the way that we never believed that we would actually having this discussion. So therefore, I think we also have to remind that, okay, we need a lot of American products, but the Americans need also a lot of European products as well. If it comes to the question of Madam Carlsborough, I think that the debate on the Ukrainian track is very much led by my colleague, High Representative Vice President Kallas. And if it comes to Article 29, of course, we are preparing. We know that there is a deadline of, if I recall correctly, 5th of June, and we want to be ready by then. Just yesterday, I had another phone call with the Ukrainian agriculture minister, so we are also consulting internally within the European Commission, and we will do our utmost to be ready and to have also support from our member states that we can have a smooth transition from the ATMs into the Article 29 procedure. To Madam Cavazzini, the digital tax, and I think it was also the question of Mr. Shirdevan. I spent quite some time, to be honest, to explain how our digital regulation functions, that what is perceived in some circles in the US as a tax are actually the fines. So if there is illegal content on the platform, and if this illegal content is not removed after, let's say, our proper procedures, there is a fine, like in any enforcement measure. So what is illegal offline should be illegal online. This is our principle. And if you simply do not correct your behavior, so there is the fine. But the fact is that for many of the US, our fines are seen as a taxes. And that's something what permanently requires explanation. And I don't think that we are there yet. And I think that Madam Cavazzini is well informed that we have, I think, 5 or 6 member states who already have the digital taxation, and it's of course something to be clearly discussed in the future, because unfortunately the OECD-less process got stuck, and we didn't make the headway in that regard. Maybe if you allow me, as a last point, because it's also linked with the question of Mr. Benifei, to explain a little bit what is the strategy for the long term, and what we are going to do for steelers in Europe. Of course, in the medium to long term, we will spare no efforts to negotiate with our American partners to hopefully get us into the greener pasture, that to have a normal trading relationship. I think it will not be easy, but I believe as the two biggest trading partners, I mean, we should really arrive to that. Until then, we'll be, of course, defending our businesses, our citizens, our workers, because that's what is our task, and we will do it very, very thoroughly. Concretely on the steel and aluminium, we simply just to give you two numbers. Steel production in Europe currently is around 124 million tons. The global overcapacity for 2026 is expected to be 630 million tons. That's gigantic. And of course, when you see that some of the big markets like US are closing themselves in, of course, we have to be prepared for the potential trade diversion. So what we are doing? Currently, between now, as of 1st of April, until these measures would expire, we are looking at how can we better manage our safeguards, our quotas. So we will be looking how to limit potential carryovers, how to make sure that that unused quotas are simply unused, and to simply tightening up the system to give a breathing space to our steel industry. And we, of course, will want to come up with more concrete proposals in the third quarter of this year, how to deal with steel and aluminium is in post-2026 period, because clearly this would be needed because of this overcapacity and because of how the big markets are simply very much limiting the trade with steel and aluminium. So, Mr. Lange, this would be the responses to the first part.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Maroš. Second round on US with 10 members asking for the floor. And Jessica van Leuven is first. 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Commissioner Šefčovič, thank you very much for being here. The tactic of retaliation is clearly not working, and I appreciate your explanation here today that you are talking to the United States, but it seems rather reactive still to me. Instead of proactive, working towards a new approach. We have a 235 billion euro trade surplus in our trade with the US, so we are not really in a good spot. Even though the US may need some of our specialty products, like you say, our economy is stronger hit by a trade war, way stronger than theirs. So we're talking European jobs here. For instance, the 200% tariff on spirits, a business that for the Netherlands alone equals 650 million euros in export to the US, will jeopardize approximately hundreds of thousands jobs in Europe. So this means we have to negotiate. We have to offer them a good deal, and that's the job of the Commission. So what I want to ask you, Commissioner, is why is the Commission not preparing a total package deal whereby we also listen to the American grievances while we maintain our current export levels to the US so we continue our business? Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Next is Céline. 1 minute, please.
Je vais parler en français. Thank you, Chair. Monsieur le Commissaire.
Commissioner, sometimes we have to be able to preempt and be reactive, and we recognise that the Commission has done that. Very quick countermeasures, but what about the calibration of them? There might be a 200% tariff slapped on our alcoholic goods, so our wine sector will die out if we don't help it. The cognac industry is already collateral damage, and other sectors will sadly follow suit. There are 3 things I want you to do to help wine producers and spirit producers so they don't bear this burden alone. 1, withdraw American spirits from the list so that we are then helped. Then think about what we're doing. We need to look at aid in the sector. 3rd, more structural. Would you think more widely about sectoral agreements with other third countries so that we can sell wine and spirits elsewhere? These are exceptional times, so would you take exceptional measures so that these sectors don't die out?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I want to start by welcoming your commitment to finding a negotiated solution with the US. My stance on tariffs is clear. They are a tax that will severely disrupt long-standing mutual beneficial transatlantic supply chains. Irish whiskey exports to the US are worth $450 million annually. A 50% tariff, never mind one at 200%, would simply be devastating. During my recent visit to Drumshanbo Distillery in County Leitrim, I witnessed firsthand the potential consequences. As a major employer of rural Ireland and with over 35% of its exports going to the US, half the jobs there are at risk. Given this, I want to directly ask you, as you mentioned previously, that the first list will be coming out of a freezer and is out of date by 5 years. I just want to hone in on bourbon specifically, given the limited advantages of targeting bourbon directly compared to the backlash that would be caused if entered into force. I would greatly welcome your openness to looking again at this list. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Next is Christina.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much, Commissioner, for being here and for being so open to meeting us. It's true that this is a very delicate moment in our trade relations. We have a lot of threats on the global stage. There's a lot of tension, and the European Commission hasn't sat there without doing anything. Of course, diplomacy is a channel, but we have to stand firm when they're trying to twist our arm. Now, I fully agree with the previous speakers. We also need to be able to be aware of which specific sectors we're going to target, because we have this bourbon threat hanging over our heads. And so we've threatened with, or rather they've threatened with 200% tariffs on the wine sector in Europe. And we've got aluminium, timber, microchips that are very sensitive, but agri-food often ends up footing the bill, as it did in 2018. So please be very careful when it comes to these sensitive products. And I think you are on the right track. You are using diplomacy, but you're also flexing your muscles if necessary. Thank you.
Yes, Kathleen.
Sorry, Chair, it's on the rest of the world, not on the US. Sorry.
And Sebastian Cruz.
Ja, hartelijk bedankt, voorzitter. Ja, onlangs reizen...
thank you, Chair. Now, recently, Commissioner Šefčovič was in the United States in order to have discussions, and 1 day later, Trump announces new tariffs. So Trump and his finance ministers have made it very clear that the tariffs that come in April could be avoided if you had agreed on a 0% rate. But of course, that's a huge threat for the European market, and the impact of that would be very serious. We're facing down a trade war, and having mutual zero tariffs. What does that mean for the EU? We should be pragmatic. Free trade without any barriers is better than an escalation.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Cortim de Frenero.
Thank you, Chair, very much. You will learn one day. Mr. Commissioner, pleasure to see you again. Most of the session today has been about what the immediate responses will be, what the Americans will do tomorrow or next week in the next 15 days, and it's understandable. We're in the middle of a trade war. But it's relatively easy in the daily scuffle to focus too much on the tactical and forget the strategic. So my question is this. I think many of us in this room would agree that what makes Europe great and what had made it very successful in the past was free trade and fair competition. And what is happening now, and especially our responses to these attacks that both free trade and fair competitions are subject to, run the risk of making this worse. If we retaliate every time there's a tariff, there goes free trade. If we subsidize every time a tariff has a negative impact on an industry, there goes fair competition. So whatever we want to do in our single market goes out the window, and we're in the rut. So I understand that tactically we have to respond, we have to show assertiveness, we have to have bargaining chips. I understand all that, but I'll be much more reassured if I knew our Trade Commissioner had some strategic limits on this. Where are the limits set by our convictions that free trade and fair competition have to be assured? Please reassure me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Saskia. For the next round. Okay. Then it's Marianne.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le
Chair, Commissioner, in your introduction, you said you wanted to be positive vis-à-vis the US. I'm not sure I agree. I think we need to get it into our heads that Trump has pinpointed our weaknesses in trade and in defense, and he wants us to genuflect, to bend to his will. Okay, we have to look at overproduction, but we're already at the edge of the abyss. So instead, we need to find outlets for the products produced. And we mustn't forget that we boast an internal market of between 450 and 500 million people. But I would also say we need immediate trade defense measures. So I want to ask you, are you thinking about a rapid activation of the anti-coercion mechanism? I asked about the anti-coercion mechanism last time, but it's not just industry that's affected. Farming too. Farming pays a high price for this trade war. So are you thinking about a compensation fund specifically earmarked for farmers? Thank you.
Merci. Lukas.
Thank you, Chair. Witajcie, Pan Kommissar. Europe is where it is because of the absence of tariffs, and I hope that in light of this growing trade war, where some of us seem to prefer taking a trade beating, instead we use this situation to deepen the internal market and lift the exceptions for the 4 basic freedoms of the internal market. Mr. Commissioner, how can we use the tariffs imposed as an argument to facilitate investments of American companies to Europe as they want to sell to European customers without rising prices? And secondly, to quote you, America is still our ally, and now to switch to classical EP language. Whereas the US started these new trade negotiations with punching us in the face, whereas Doge is disabling the democratic institutions in the US, whereas Musk used his control of X to influence European member states' elections, whereas the Trump administration deported people against a court ruling without a hearing to a torture prison in Salvador, and whereas President Trump and Vance humiliated Zelensky. And like a good EP resolution, I could go on and on and on, but my time is over. So what would be the turning point for the Commission to see the US not as an ally anymore? Thank you.
Thanks. And last for this round is Madame Pereira.
Thank you very much. Sr. Comissário, nós temos falado muito sobre...
Commissioner, we've spoken about trade wars, and this is painted as a battle between economic blocs. But it's not about Brussels bureaucrats versus Washington officials. Who's really affected? SMEs and citizens. And they can't bear these extra costs caused by tariffs. They can't rearrange their supply chains at short notice. So, I want to look at our EU response. But then I look at Brazil. Brazil has a different approach. Their retaliatory measures won't make their products more expensive for their citizens. Now, of course, Brazil is very important for us within the Mercosur agreement. And Brazil is really focusing on diplomacy and also changing the places that it's sending its products to, so different outlets for its products. Now, I wonder whether the EU is potentially endangering its SMEs and its citizens, because an SME is very endangered. It can't just shift around its supply chain at short notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I also would like to thank all the honourable members for their question and their comments. I have to start with the last speaker of the last round, because I think that I didn't highlight enough what Mr. Benifei was proposing, because I think that we have to communicate on all levels. So we definitely should communicate with the administration. We do it on the top level be it Secretary of Commerce, be it US Trade Representative. Of course, we continue our contacts on the officials levels, and also my colleague commissioners are talking to the counterparts. But of course, the parliamentary diplomacy is absolutely crucial, because I think that they have a direct feedback from their voters, from their businesses, and I presume that the local businesses are telling the elected official the same, what you are telling me and what we hear also from the grassroots. The trade war is not good for anyone. Tariff is bad for every business. It deteriorates the trades, it threatens value chains, it complicates the business. And of course, if it comes to the SMEs, as it was rightly pointed out by Madame Pereira, they're usually first to suffer the most, because it's not that easy to adjust. So we are clearly aware of this. I mean, we are approaching this problem with this state of mind. But at the same time, I'm sure if I would come here and I would tell you, look, you know, this is what is happening, there is nothing we could do because we do not want to endanger this sector, that sector, so we just have to accept what is coming, you will not be happy with me. You will not be happy with me at all. And you also have to understand that what is the most difficult part of our job in the Commission is to actually combine this package of the countermeasures, because it has to be meaningful, it has to be on the same level, and it has to be fair to all our member states, and it has to go across all sectors, so we are not really creating, I would say, unbearable burden for a specific country or for a specific sector. It's not easy, and we don't like to do this job, because we would prefer to talk about, as it was suggested by Mr. Cruz, to talk about lowering the tariffs. That was my opening bit when I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Latnik and Mr. Greer when we met for the first time. You would like to lower the tariff? Then I am your best partner. Let's look at it. You know what we can do to make our trade more fluid, frictionless. When we can look line by line, tariff by tariff, where we can go lower. So let's have this discussion. But I don't think that there is that the U.S. thinking is that direction. What they want right now is to bring investment to U.S., to onshore the production lines, to reindustrialize the country, and currently they believe that the best way how to do is through the tariff policy. I hope that one day we'll get to this discussion, what we can do to have our trade smoother, but currently we are clearly not there, even though I clearly indicated that we would be ready for this discussion. We are also ready to engage on standards. I was suggesting to our American partners, let's revive the discussions we had in the past on the mutual recognition of the standards certificates for the cars. We have different standards because simply we have different roads. I mean, our cities are smaller, American cars are bigger, we have different safety features, but at the same time, I'm sure that we can make the approval process, homologation, the testing of the cars a bit easier, and we can do it on the basis of the agreement, on the mutual recognition of the standards certificates. That's also the possibility. But simply we are still not there yet, because now they are preparing for the 2nd of April, and of course for all this discussion you need a partner. I mean, you need two to the tango, and I would say we are still at the phase where we are trying to understand how they're going to approach. They have a lot of questions. We are responding to them, and we are also trying to correct some of the perceptions which they have when they simply feel that VAT is non-tariff barrier, when they feel that the fines are taxation, and I think that's the process explanation and mutual understanding, which is not yet completed. If it comes to several questions, I think from the first three speakers, and I have to say that Mr. Chairman has even worse handwriting than I do, so so we can compete in that one. But I think Madam van Leuven, Madam Inmar, Madam Kerber, also Madam Meister, they've been very much concerned about the tariffs on the tariffs on the spirits and wine. And clearly we of course understand this concern. We are in touch. We have spoken to the spirit industry, and as I said, I would say therefore we merged the two lists so we can have more consultations on this regard. And of course you also be rest assured that this was the issue which also raised with the Secretary Latnik, that we need to de-escalate. We need to kind of also approach a bit of a cool down approach. Let's see how much we can approach that. But clearly, this is one of the issues which I know it's very pertinent. It's very important for many countries, for many producers, and we are talking to all of them. But you also ask very good questions about alternative market access. So, which is other words for new free trade agreements. And I was telling you at the beginning what we are currently negotiating. But I also would like to recall that in December and in January we concluded the free trade agreement with Brazil, Mercosur. So there are 4 big countries which are, I would say, very important markets for spirits, for wine, not speaking about Mexico, which is net importer of the agri-food products. And of course, we are talking to India, which is a country of 1.4 billion of consumers, and we are talking to many others. So I think that we clearly have to work and to realize what is the potential of these new FTAs and how much we need them right now. And also we have to realize why these countries are now approaching us with such intensity that they want to have free trade agreements with us, because they see a reliable partner, they see the big market, they see that we respect the agreement and we are fair to them. And this is what we want to continue, but we also have to be fair and to go to those markets where we have this huge potential for exporting our agri-food production, our wines, our spirits, and we are ready to lower the huge import duties to the minimum as it was negotiated. And on top of it, what is very important and how we can help the wine and spirit industry is to export these products to the countries where they respect our geographical indication. Because you know that very well, once your GI is protected, you can sell your product for a higher price. So it's a better benefit for those who export. So therefore, I think we have to be comprehensive when we are discussing this issue. How to protect our industry, how to open new opportunities for them, and working on this clearly together. And also I will try the pronunciation. I don't think I will, but I will start with Sebastian. Sebastian is okay? He left. Ah, okay. But then I think there was Mr. Cotrim de Figueiro. We are all trying to pronounce our names correctly, even though I know it's a challenge, including with my own name. But I can reassure you that free trade clearly is in our DNA, and therefore you see this I would say huge effort from our side, and the fact that our DigiTrade is currently absolutely overwhelmed by the multiple tracks, multiple ongoing free trade negotiations, because we see that there is a momentum and we want to use it to the maximum. And also Lukáš was asking, do we see the United States as allies? I mean, this is the history very strong since Second World War. And we have now a couple of weeks of a big tension. So let's just keep everything in a perspective. And I would say that that's what is most important, is to focus on the concrete agenda right now. And then I think there have been the questions about what kind of instruments we are going to use, if it's anti-coercion, if it's enforcement. I would say that we need to use the instrument which fits the best, which would deliver the results, which would allow me to come to you, if Mr. Chairman would invite me again, by the mid of April to tell you everything is done. Ideally, we found agreement with the United States. We are continuing negotiations, and what we do not need to use this list, or unfortunately, this was not possible, and we have to present our countermeasures, and everything will be ready, and it would be efficient, and it would work. So I think that is what I would suggest. And of course, potential negative consequences of the farmers, we are very, very aware of that, and of course, we are discussing it. We are discussing it with the Commissioner Hansen.
So thanks a lot, and good luck, of course, for the negotiations, and also good luck for the recognition work regarding standards. I remember quite well when we discussed the TTIP and the safety standards for cars and the crash test, and it was not so easy to get a recognition on both sides. Nevertheless, now we come to the second part of the game, the structured dialogue with the Commission. And Maroš, I will not ask you now to your work progressing the economic security doctrine, the so-called Šefčovič doctrine. But we had this morning a discussion with the Swedish Board of Trade, and they made a mapping about the so-called trade-related agreements. And we call it sometimes mini deals, which are out of any transparency and also out of accountability and traceability. And we have really